Hello YouTube, welcome to the natural Q&A number 9 for all of your questions that don't quite fit in the other types of Q&As. Usually more personal type questions, if you have questions related to philosophy or advice you would like to receive, it's here in the comment section. You can add whatever you want. And as always, if someone is kind enough to timestamp this, I would appreciate it because this video will be longer than an hour, I'm almost certain. Let's get started. Kirk Gunner asks, you talk a lot about your grandpa and how in many ways he's a model man. Will there ever be a video about your grandpa or dedicated to your grandpa? For example, a motivational type video or a deep dive video on how he lived his life and the lessons we can take from that. So in terms of showing him on camera, it's never going to happen, I think, because I, of course, keep my personal life personal and private. But when it comes to what we can learn from him, that is a good idea. I could make a video based on that and relate it to fitness or lifting in one way or another. In terms of motivation, I actually have two video ideas, pretty big videos actually, that are going to require a lot of editing on my part that I want to share with you. There are stories that are related to my grandpa and the mountains where he lives and where I lived, because all of the most important moments of my life, the moment that changed me the most, happened in these mountains. And so I want to actually show you footage of that place because it's to me an inspiration. It's always the place where I go to resource myself. And I'm certain that you are going to appreciate the imagery I'm going to be able to get because it's a beautiful place. But because of the current situation in the world, I'm not allowed to travel there. So I'm going to wait until people start being reasonable again. Idris Adelai, that wasn't a question, I'm just saying your name. Marvin Uloa, hi, as an 18-year-old just getting started into living the adult life, I have found that school has severely handicapped my ability to study because I was always a smart kid, which really only means that I didn't have to ever study to pass any class, which is something that many people can relate to. You start gifted, and then when life advances, you realize that your gift becomes a curse because you never learn how to actually work. I just paid attention, took notes, etc., and you had 100% guaranteed. You didn't memorize anything in school. You realized that everything was easy mode. You skipped classes and nothing happened, and you realized that the education that you received wasn't complete. Now you graduated and you have to actually start studying to achieve something. And you ask, do you have any experience with these kinds of situations? What would you recommend I focus on the most? Because apparently you, Marvin, want to get into med school. Okay, so I have experience with that because I had the same thing happen to me when I had a very easy time in school. But for me, it was a little bit different because I went from a very difficult high school where I had to bust my ass to survive to a college that was so easy that I was almost depressed because everything came naturally to me. And so I didn't want to work. You and many people like you and I were in the same situation where there wasn't enough challenge. And because school always matches and the pace of the classroom after the worst students, which is completely idiotic, of course, you were never truly challenged because you were better than these kids. And so it was super easy for you. What you need to do in this case is, if the world refuses to be tough on you, you need to be tough on yourself. It's something that I personally discovered through lifting. Once lifting took over my life, it changed everything because I realized that I couldn't wait for people to give me challenges. I couldn't wait for people to raise the bar. I had to do it myself. Most people were perfectly content with the bar being super low because it's comfortable to be mediocre. So, especially if you want to go into med school, you are going to have to kick your own butt. You have to start studying by yourself. Don't wait for people to tell you to study. Med school, I know people that did med school, and I can tell you one thing. If you study when people tell you to, if you read books that people tell you to, you're going to flunk. The people that make it are the ones that are 2 chapters ahead, that want to discover. They see a topic about biology and they start to research it because they think, that might be something I'm going to have to learn down the line. And they're correct, because the amount of stuff you're going to have to memorize in med school is immense. And you said that you didn't used to have to memorize anything ever. I don't know what you mean by that, if you just have a good memory naturally or if you never trained that gift. But if it's not the case, you have to train it. Memorize as much as you can because it's going to be your lot in life if you want to become a doctor. And you say that the more you think about all of the things you have to do, the more paralyzed you become. Just one thing at a time. Okay, one day pick up a book and read for an hour. The next day take notes. Then the next day summarize the book that you just read. All of these things are going to take time, and because you are a children that was gifted, you don't know what it's like. So you have to not only work, but also learn how to work. And the only way to do that is to start working. You're going to spend a lot of hours that are going to be worthless. Or you're going to spend 4 hours writing something and then you're going to toss it in the garbage and think, oh, I just wasted 4 hours. Wrong. You developed a skill for 4 hours. That skill is more important than the product that came from it. So always keep that in mind. And for anyone who is in these situations, if you can catch the problem before it occurs, if you are in school and everything is too easy, make it a challenge to be the best of the best. Make it a challenge to skip a class, to learn a new language on your own. See if your teacher is okay with that. If you can just finish the work super fast in class and then start reading a book. School will never challenge you to the full extent of your potential, so don't let it make you mediocre. Always keep pushing and find your own way. Mohammed Al-Manun. I love how open-minded and firm you are on your own beliefs. Could you explain more the aspects you mentioned that turned you away from Islam, like the contradictions, freedom, etc.? I'm a Muslim myself, just genuinely curious. So by turning away, I must precise for the people who don't know that I wasn't born Muslim, I wasn't from a Muslim family. But when I was 15, 16, I had a spiritual crisis of sorts, and I was starting to get drawn towards Islam. And so, because I didn't want to convert to a religion I knew nothing about, I read the Quran, I went to the mosque, I discussed with people, and the more I learned, the more in love I fell with Islam. To this day, I still am in love with Islam, but there were key aspects of the religion that just prevented me from actually submitting entirely to Allah and actually, confirming my faith as a Muslim. Which is also the reason why, to this day, I still consider myself a Christian. Because I align more with Christianity than Islam, but I do appreciate aspects of both religion and I try to actually implement them in my life. Now, for the contradictions, I'm not a scholar of the Quran, so I'm not going to tell you that, oh, I read this surah and I can tell you that it contradicts at this point when this certain quote happens. I'm not going to do that. I can just tell you that from my stance, there are things that just don't align with the way I want to live my life. And most of that comes from the fact that if you are to be a Muslim, you have to submit to God, and that also entails a certain degree of renouncement when it comes to your free will. Because if you look at the Quran, you look at the Muslim faith, Allah decides everything. Everything is decided by Allah. If you lose your job, it was Allah. He has a better plan in store for you, so you just have to accept it. I am not at the level of wisdom, if you can call it that, where I'm okay with this, because I still firmly believe that my fate is in my hands. And it's also the reason why I'm not fully aligned with Christianity either, because the idea of being saved and needing grace to be saved, I dislike. I simply don't like the idea that I cannot just be my own self and only depend upon my own person to get things done. I understand that there are things outside of my control, but when a third party, an entity, a god, starts to actually have an influence on it that sort of takes away my own responsibility, it contradicts my personal philosophy. So this is why I could never actually become a Muslim, and why I'm not technically fully Catholic either, because there are certain aspects that I don't align with. But the discussion with Islam is very interesting. Actually, I have a video planned on the topic for next Thursday, where I'm going to take the things about Islam that I really like, and I'm going to show them to you guys through the scope of lifting, because there's a ton of wisdom in the Quran about lifting weights, about being motivated, being a good person, etc. So this is something that you can look forward to. Hello YouTube. How did you get into stoicism? Did someone introduce it to you, or did you discover it by yourself? I discovered it by myself. A lot of the time when it comes to philosophies, I already had a certain degree of connection with the philosophy in question before I even opened the first book. And that's something that I found with stoicism, existentialism, with Nietzsche, with a lot of authors. And that's a very simple, it's because of a very simple reason. there is synchronicity in thoughts between humans. It's what we call parallel thinking. So if someone somewhere came up with a concept, there's a chance that there's another person, even hundreds, thousands of people that came up with the same concept but never actually intellectualized it. So it's most of philosophy. Most of the time you're going to read something and think, oh, that actually aligns with who I am. And that is because you're just rediscovering your own thoughts through the writings of someone else. And sometimes it matches, sometimes it doesn't. For me, Stoicism matches. But just like with anything, there are things in Stoicism I disagree with. For example, the renouncement of certain emotions like anger that is a little bit demonized in Stoicism, I disagree with. I understand why it was needed back then, because men were too fiery, but nowadays men are too wet, they're too wimpy, they're too water-like, so we need that fire back. That's an aspect of Stoicism that I don't therefore subscribe to. No one introduced it to me. Usually when it comes to books, I discover them by happenstance, where I'm going to be in a library somewhere and a book is going to catch my eye, I'm going to grab it, I'm going to read it. How has Stoicism changed your life? It truly hasn't. It just confirmed to me that the way I was living my life was correct. Because when I started becoming more stoic, my life started to improve. My relationship with my environment and people started to improve. So when I opened these books, it helped me reinforce these habits because now I have the blueprint, right? It's in writing, but it also helped me share it with you guys. I think it's the most important fact because I had books that I could give you that me, myself, wouldn't have been able to actually verbalize for you. Some of these concepts are very advanced. I live them, but just because you live a concept doesn't mean that you know how to teach them, which is why the work of the Stoics is so important and so interesting to read. How was your life before you started reading Stoic philosophy and how it is now as compared to before? So I'm going to switch the question. How was my life before I was more Stoic? I was a more Stoic person. Well, just like anyone who lacks a Stoic trait and who could learn from Stoicism, my emotions were easily swayed. I was often angry at people. I was often jealous of people. I was often taking out my own insecurities on people. When things happened that were out of my control, I panicked, I was anxious for no reason, all of which was just weighing me down and preventing me from living life to the fullest and actually being in control and becoming a man. And it saddens me to this day to see that many people don't live their life like that, where they are constantly being swayed left and right and they are quite childish in their behaviors. They could use some stoicism themselves. And the changes I noticed in myself, more confident. I think stoicism is the key to confidence because it truly helps you recenter your attention on yourself, which makes you a better person, and then you can actually be of use. People who lack stoic traits tend to not only be useless, but they're also a hindrance because now they're like kids, again, that you have to take care of, and therefore they are a weight on society. I can tell you that a society that is fully stoic is a society that is going to progress much faster when in terms of what actually matters. On the flip side, a non-stoic society is going to be one that is going to perpetually regress and push progress that is actually just deterioration of the society. Ariane Michael. Have you ever read Sunken Rock? I find the author's protagonist's perspective on body and fitness really interesting. And it's an awesome manga, by the way. Yes, I have read Sunken Rock, and I will cover it on the channel at some point. Just like with any other manga, it's just that it takes me a tremendous amount of time. Whenever I pick one, because I have to read through the entire thing, I have to collect all of the sources I need, and then I have to actually write scripts, analyze everything. Right now, I'm still on Berserk. I am 1/3 of the way through Berserk, but because it's Berserk and it's so special, I'm going to take my sweet time. But Sunken Rock will happen eventually. And yes, the mentality and the philosophy within Sunken Rock is very interesting. Actually, one of my favorite manga panels of all time is in Sunken Rock. It's the one where you can see the hero doing some kicks and stretches with the text, the only thing that we truly own is the body we own every day. Which is incredibly true. That's the only thing that you truly own on this earth. It's this body and the soul and spirit that inhabits it. The rest is just bullshit. It's de la poudre aux yeux, as we say in French. You will not take it with you when you die, and even in life, it doesn't come with you. The only thing that comes around with you is your body. So you need to sharpen it, you need to treat it like a blade, and you also need to develop the spirit that inhabits it, so that the two come hand in hand. James R3, how many languages do you speak? Also, do you see value in learning a language even if it's not commonly used where you live? Good questions. Okay, so I have a strict definition of what it means to speak a language. To me, if you can speak a language, I can drop you in a country that speaks that language and you can do just fine. In this case, I only speak 3 languages. Technically only 2 actually. I speak English and French, and then I speak French dialects like Québécois. I speak some African dialects that rely on French that are really just patois, or in this case, in French, we call them pigeons. Not pigeons, pigeons. So 2, technically 2. After that, I have Spanish and Portuguese that I understand perfectly, so I can translate, but I cannot speak them or write them properly. Actually, I'm lying. Spanish I can write 100%. Portuguese I can't because I don't know the grammar, but I cannot speak them. If you put me in front of a Spanish person, I'm going to sound mentally retarded because I cannot string sentences and my syntax is horrendous. So 2. And do I see value in learning a language even if it's not commonly used where you live? Yes, because learning a language does many things for you, but the most important one is that it shapes your brain. It modifies the plasticity of the brain, and I firmly believe that if you have kids one day, or if you're young yourself, the best thing you can do to invest in your future or the future of your children is to teach them a foreign language. It makes you smarter because it allows yourself to think through different dimensions. When you are bilingual, trilingual, you can switch from language to language. And when you get to the level where the switch is seamless, you have developed and unlocked a different mode of thinking in terms of semantics, in terms of philosophy. You have an ability to grasp more complicated concepts because you can look at them from different perspectives. You can turn them around. It's like when most people actually can, picture a 3D sphere or a 3D cube in front of their eyes. Like right now I see a cube. But the thing is that most people can only see it from that perspective. If you speak English, you see one perspective, you see one face of the cube. If you speak Spanish, you can rotate the cube, you can see it from a different angle, and that's incredibly valuable. So even if the language is not used where you live, it's still good to take, especially if it's a language that's very far away and far removed from the one that you speak originally. So that is something that I actually encourage you to do. It's tough, but it's worth it. Marvin again. In the latest character study on our boy Hemingway, you mentioned many names of other fitness YouTubers and a little bit of your opinion on them slipped out. I've watched all the episodes and I've noticed a pattern. The deeper you get into, you love long messages, my god. The deeper you get into ruining what's left of Blaino's life, the more comfortable you get and the more you enjoy it. Okay, I'm going to get to the point. Something inside me doesn't like it, blah blah blah. Then you say that it looks like Greg Doucette that slowly devolved and now is a clown. How do you know that the character study videos and their influence on your YouTube personality will not turn you into another clown, except natural and a lover of croissants? Good question. Any type of content that you make on YouTube has an influence on you and others because you attract a certain crowd, that crowd has an influence on you, you yourself making the content starts to shape yourself towards the content, etc. So it's a legitimate fear that you have, and I know it's a fear that many people share, where they like a content creator, but they see certain things in them that scares them. Like you said, stuff that you don't like. Because there is an evolution, but you see the evolution going towards something negative. And so, in this case, you are afraid that the channel will devolve and become one of the many channels that turn to shit. Now, the fear is legitimate. And I understand that some of you guys are going to be convinced that the channel is turning to shit or it's bad now. I can't really help you with that. It's your own perspective. It's your own opinion. You are free to not watch anymore. I can tell you, however, that I'm taking pretty expensive measures so that it never happens. Meaning that for the character studies, for example, they are self-confined. You don't hear me talk about Blahino outside of the character studies. So it's a pocket of the channel that is quarantined, in a sense. And there are many people on the channel that never watch the character studies. They don't even know who he is. They only care about the other content. You watch it, and you also watch the other content. So you are tainted, in a sense. You entered the tent of the man's and you're contaminated now, and you go out and you're afraid that the rest is going to be contaminated as well. You don't need to worry about it. At least I will not let it happen. Don't let it happen to yourself. Don't let your own view of the rest of the content I make be skewed. When you watch my character studies, you can think of it as a character. You can think of it as mean NH or cruel, savage NH, because that's really what I am. It's a persona that I espouse because it's what's making the character studies so fun to watch. And also because it's a part of my personality. It's just that I don't let it shine through in other videos. I am cruel. Actually, I am incredibly cruel. In real life, I'm not a nice person. I have absolutely no problem taking problems and solving them my way. And that's one way that I do it. If I think that being mean and being crass and vulgar can get stuff done, I do it. And I have no quarrels or qualms with that. If it makes you uncomfortable and you would prefer to see me as a perfect angel, just avoid these videos. But understand that you are having a sugarized version of me if you do that, because you're not seeing me for who I truly am. And who I truly am is someone who's complex and who is mean sometimes and nice sometimes, like most people actually. It's not black and white. But you also need to keep in mind that the reason why Greg Doucette became what he became is because he loves money and he has no integrity. Both things that, if you watch the channel, you know I'm pretty solid on. I have my principles and I will never deviate from them, so you don't have to worry about that. It's not going to happen. Sacred burnout. You've said before that you are against any and all drugs. But how do you feel about modern medicine and vaccines, such as shots for the flu and TDAP? I don't know what TDAP is. Okay, I'm not saying that you're doing it, but here we're dealing with an interesting thing, a thing that I've dealt with my entire life, because when you say you're anti-drugs, the first thing that people try to do is they try to poke holes in your armor and they try to find things that you would be okay with so that they can then call you a hypocrite. For example, they can say, well, you're anti-drugs, but you're vaccinated. And that, in a sense, is a good contradiction because it's illogical. It doesn't align with the stance of someone who should be anti-drugs. The thing is that I am not against any and all drugs. I'm against certain select drugs. Now, when it comes to me, myself, and I don't take any drugs. That's my prerogative. I refuse to let drugs enter my body. It's something that is conditional to my health, meaning that it's very easy to be anti-drugs when your health is good. If one day someone announces to me that if I don't take this pill, I'm going to die, chances are I'm going to change my stance. But since I'm healthy, I don't need to. So it's situational hypocrisy in a sense. Now, when it comes to modern medicine, I'm not against it. I mean, any scientific advancement is good to take, but it's the use that we make of it that I disagree with. For example, antibiotics. Antibiotics by themselves are great, right? When you have an infection or whatever happens and you need them to survive, you're pretty happy that the country that you live in has them. But look at the way we've been using them for the past 20 years. The second someone gets a cold or whatever, runny nose, we just pump them full of antibiotics. And that has created antibiotic-resistant bacteria that now are becoming more and more dangerous and are going to be a major crisis in 5-10 years. And that is because this modern society relies too much on medicine. Medicine needs to be a last resort. Only if you're about to pass out or die or have complications do you need medicine. The rest of the time, just let your body do its thing. This is how I live my life. I have a headache, okay, my head hurts, so what? My body knows how to handle that. It's because people always rely on drugs that their ailments and diseases get worse and worse. I can tell you that when I was a kid, I had headaches every day. And what did I do? I took aspirin, I took Efferalgan, I took all of these pills that are supposed to make you feel better, and they did. But the next day, wouldn't you know it, the headache was back because I wasn't letting my body do its job. Now I'm at a stage in my life where I get a headache maybe twice a year, and when it happens, I just sit it out. I just wait an hour and then it's gone because your body knows how to deal with things like this. All of these minor inconveniences that we fix with comfortable medicine are getting worse because we're too weak. I refuse to do that. My body knows what to do. I have a strong immune system. It can figure itself out. And that leads to the vaccine question. Am I against vaccines? Absolutely not. I think that vaccines are a good scientific advancement, and I am personally vaccinated. I was vaccinated when I was a kid, and then me myself as an adult, once in a while, I check my what we call a carnet santé in France. I look at my shots and I think, okay, I need to renew this and this. But I only do it for diseases that can kill me or the people that I love. If a disease will only make me sick for 2 days, I will not take a shot because it's completely useless. Same for the flu. I have never gotten the flu shot in my life because it's a stupid flu. Why do I need that? The flu can't even get me. I don't know if I've told you guys, but I think I've said it in the past. The last time I was sick was 13 years ago. The last time I was sick was when I was 15. I haven't been sick yet from all of these years. And I go outside, I see people, I live in a very cold country, which doesn't really mean anything because diseases are not correlated with the temperature. But my point is that I'm doing just fine without it because I'm actually allowing my immune system to do its job. And it's something that I got from my parents, actually. I'm lucky that my parents were intelligent in that. They got me vaccinated for the thing that actually mattered and could have killed me, but for the rest, they refused everything. They didn't remove my les ganglions, these things that you have here, when I was young and sick, because they knew that it would just actually, stop one day, and I would be very happy to still have them in my older age because it's part of the human body, it's there for a reason. Same for my wisdom tooth, they weren't removed. My parents were intelligent, they understood that the reason why we have these extra teeth is for a reason. I still have them in my mouth, and my dentist is amazed because I'm legit the only patient they've ever seen with all of their tooth, with 0 cavities. I've never had a cavity in my life, and with perfect teeth. Because I understand that my body knows what it's doing, that nature made me a certain way for a reason, and that if I just actually tough it out and handle and endure some of the discomfort that this life throws at me, I'm going to get stronger from it. Now, some people, when they hear that, they say that you're anti-vax. Keep in mind that the anti-vax thing is an ad hominem. Just because you don't want to take certain shots doesn't mean that you're anti-vax, you just are selective with the shots that you take. Calais. What do you think about being strong? What do you think constitutes the feeling of being strong? Hypertrophy, being able to lift heavy things, mental aspects, etc. Well, it's a broad question for a broad definition. Being strong can mean many things. A woman that is a mother of 3, that her husband died for a reason or another, that actually raises the 3 kids and works, is incredibly strong. Can she curl 5 pounds? Maybe not, but she still is a beast because there are different definitions of strength. And even if we look at physical strength by itself, there are so many aspects of it. Like, you can be strong on a curl, on a bench, on a press. There are iterations of strength, many levels of it. Hypertrophy is related to that, but you have to keep in mind that strength, the value of strength, of physical strength, is a performance-based value, and hypertrophy is an artistic-based value. One is aesthetic, the other one is athletic. The two are not the same. So hypertrophy I would put aside, even though I do believe that becoming big makes you stronger mentally and it makes you a stronger person overall because you're tougher to dominate. You become more confident. But it's not necessarily because it makes you stronger. Although, of course, you get bigger, you get stronger. There's no way around that. King of Dregs. I would like to know your thoughts regarding astral projection and lucid dreaming. Thank you and have a good day. Okay, so the first one for lucid dreams, I have never had a lucid dream in my life, so I can't really tell you about that. It sounds cool, but I also know that it triggers sleep paralysis in some people when you try to actually get into a lucid state. So for as someone who has had sleep paralysis in the past, it's no fun. Plus, just like many people, I actually have the ability to break the sleep paralysis, but the issue is that I injure myself when I do it. The last time I did, I snapped a finger because I was just struggling against the paralysis so much that eventually I actually tore a tendon. So not the best experience. Plus, it's really scary for anyone who's had that because even though you know that it's a sleep paralysis and not real, the demons and the things and the figures that you see are pretty real. So I'm not going to delve into that. And it's the same for astral projection. I don't know if it works. If you look at certain documents by the FBI and the CIA, apparently they poured millions upon millions of dollars in certain military experiments that actually had people project themselves and they could see things from a distance. They could, it's long distance prophecy, whatever they called it. It was an actual like scientific name. So I don't know what to believe in with that. I know that I've never done it. So if you have done it, maybe it works, who knows? But the question is, why would I want to do it? It's like with lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming is a state where you're fully in control of things around you and you can influence your fate. Well, that's called real life. That's my life. I go outside, I'm in control, I do what I want to do. So I don't need to lucid dream. Same for astral projection. You are going to explore an imaginary world that might be a third or fourth dimension. Okay, great. But this world is big, vast. There are so many people and things to see. I don't need to enter a new dimension. There are still things to this day that I haven't done, and I will die before I get to do everything I wish in this world and realm. So I'm not really interested. Rasmus Mott. I'm really interested to know whether you ever considered studying a lifting-related degree. No, I never did, because I keep my hobby and my money-making habits, my job, separate, because I fully understand that there's a strong chance that if I started making money from it, I would actually lose the passion, lose the love, and it's something that I want to avoid at all costs. Richard Hypertrophy. Best advice for trouble being an outsider introvert and having trouble feeling the need to make friendships and maintain and grow them. I feel the best energized by myself and around people I can't match their energy. I am still young, by the way. Well, first off, why do you seek people? Right? Do you seek friends just because society told you that you needed friends, or is there a need? Is there a desire in your heart? If there is, look at how much it actually influences you and how much do you actually need. For me, the older I get, the more alone I am, the better I fare. And I've realized that I don't really need many people. I can count on the finger of one hand my close friends, and I don't need to see them very often. I just need to make sure that they're okay, we communicate. But when it comes to that, you will find that if you are deeply introverted, your life can be very happy and developed without much people around you. So don't feel forced to make friendships. But if you do, learn yourself, understand your battery levels. When are you going to burn out? When you start to burn out and you start to feel drained by the presence of others, pull out. Okay, leave the group, recharge, and come back. Don't actually traumatize yourself with social interactions when you are not in the mood. Second question, what is your best advice for life in general? That's very broad. Wisdom that could potentially prevent your mistakes happening to us. I feel like one of the best ones is being yourself. Yes, of course, being yourself is very important. For general wisdom, I would say don't care about the opinions of others, focus on yourself, develop your hobby, your hobbies, your skills, learn who you are. Because being yourself is impossible if you don't know who you are, and many people have no idea who they are. No idea, meaning that I have met people in my life that I had a better grasp on their identity than they had, which is terrifying, because it's very easy to manipulate people who don't have a strong sense of identity. So develop your individuality, develop your identity, and then once that is done, you can go out in the wood. Actually, it's an advice that every single kid should have received. You build your identity from the ground up, and then you open up to others. You can build yourself with the help of others, but don't let it happen too much, or you're going to become dependent on these people. Mac, what advice would you give to an inexperienced 90-year-old guy who is interested only in a serious relationship with a woman? What are some important lessons in finding the right partner and maintaining the relationship with them? So first off, I recommend you watch the video I made about how to get a girlfriend, because I covered these points in details. But if you're someone who's only interested in serious relationships, understand that you are born in the wrong time of history, because nowadays most people don't want that, and that includes women. Even though deep down that's what they want, they have been brainwashed into thinking that it's cooler to just be free and have multiple partners and blah, blah, blah. So you're going to fight an uphill battle, but there are still good women out there, and there are still women who are good inside, but they haven't quite figured out what they really want yet. So what you need to do is stay true to yourself and only pursue women that you want to build things with. If the women are scared or they don't want a committed relationship, either just let them go entirely or just stick it through and see if they change their mind. And if they don't, go and see the next one. You cannot build something with someone who doesn't want to build something. To find the right partner, I can only tell you that you need, again, to know who you are yourself, have a good idea of what are deal breakers for you, things that are just not going to work if someone is a certain way. And to maintain the relationship, well, it's cliche to say, but communication. Communication is so important. And sometimes we get frustrated or tired, we don't want to talk, but that's when the trap is closing on you. Because the less you talk, the more miscomprehension happens between you and your partner, the more quiproquo, the worse it gets. Everything that you can, put it down on the table. Put your cards on the table. I know that men are told to be mysterious and blah blah blah. It's the reason why these same people 2 years down the line say, "Oh, I can't believe my wife said that. She's a witch." No, you tricked her by pretending to be someone you weren't. She did the same, and now you're both miserable or you got abused. There's no mistaking it. It's because you weren't forthright and honest at the start. Asan C. You mentioned that you train outside. No, I train inside. And you found ways to walk around the cold. Yes, I have. I live in England, which is pretty much freezing cold year round, and the only space I would potentially have for a squat rack is my garden. My main focus is my legs and posterior chain, so squats are a must. How do you go about training outside, specifically in regards to the cold? I would tell you, if you live in England, that is a wet country where it rains all the time, to actually build a shed. Even a shitty ass shed, just something that is going to prevent your platform and your weights and your bar from being touched by the rain, because good luck squatting with a bar that is drenched. It's going to be a hazard. So make a shed. Don't even make a garage. Make like une cabane, and you'll be good. Even made of fucking like metal, bent metal that you find in a junkyard. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be pretty. It just needs to be there. It won't prevent from the cold though, which is something I know very well because my gym is at 20, 30 degrees for 6 months of the year. And I mean Fahrenheit, not Celsius. So the way I found around it is, one, habituate your body to the cold. Take cold showers. Don't go outside with 15 coats. Actually allow your body to feel the cold, especially in early autumn and fall. It's so important. If you go from being super warm all summer and then just covering up all fall to having to train in a cold garage in winter, you are going to be toast. You need to let your tendons and muscles habituate to the cold. So go out when it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit, when it's like 10 degrees Celsius, with only a shirt. Yeah, it's going to be cold, but you need to get your body ready for what's going to come. When that happens, you're going to actually be able to handle it to a certain extent. What you can do as well is you can eat certain foods before you train that are going to be thermogenic, so they're going to keep you warm. More proteins. I have found that raw garlic, raw onions can also help. And so that's pretty much all that for the cold. But always remember, yes, your cold showers are very important. Keep your small capillaries plentiful so that they are there the day where you actually train and it's 20 degrees Fahrenheit and your fingers start to freeze. You need to have a very strong ability to pump up the blood and warm up the body. And for that, vascularity is important. You need to develop a specific type of vascularities. Eziovia. What are your favorite foods from Italy, Spain, and Mexico? Italy, I would say risotto, and then the cliche stuff like bolognese pasta, I really like, with the big meatballs. Spain, I love Spanish food, don't get me wrong, but I cannot really go for a dish because the desserts are really, really great. My favorite Portuguese dessert is pastel de nata, and my favorite Spanish dessert is actually it's the same thing. It's what we call damn, I forgot the name, but it's a type of flan that we make for dessert that's really good. Churros are pretty good too, even though it's pretty much fat food. Yeah, a good Spanish dish. Paella, of course, but that's also very cliche. I like all of these foods from like the Mediterranean basin. I love all of these foods. And Mexico, I would say burritos. Second question, how do you deal with Christmas, New Year Eve, or some junk food? For example, do you give yourself permission to eat cakes, candy, cookies on these festivities? Well, my family doesn't really do that. We usually make a big dish that is healthy and we eat that. It's just that I might eat more. I don't eat much at all, and the quantities I eat are very small, the portions I eat. So on these, I will actually get double portion. So I get a second serving of the delicious food, but that pretty much starts and ends there. When it comes to cakes, candy, cookies, I'm not limiting myself with stuff like this. I just know that sugar is empty calories and it's not the greatest for me, so I eat it very sparingly. AGF Scott. Do you watch the Olympia, and what are your thoughts on it if you do? Also, do you watch other categories such as classic physique? Although I'm against drugs, I do find it interesting to see what drug user can build in terms of a physique. I used to obsessively watch pro bodybuilding, yes. I wouldn't miss the Olympia for all of the gold in the world. But since making this channel, I've realized that it's not good for your psyche, for your ability to actually love natural bodybuilding. It just made my body dysmorphia worse and worse and worse. So I vowed to not consume that type of content anymore, and I have stopped. So any type someone is enhanced or all of these shows, I don't follow. I don't follow bodybuilding anymore because I'm trying to build what I perceive to be a better version of bodybuilding, which is natural bodybuilding. But I agree with you that seeing the limits of what science and drugs can do is interesting. It used to fascinate me in the past to see how big someone could get or the arms they could get. Nowadays, I don't care anymore. I wouldn't go as far as to call it maturity, but I do think that once you get more advanced in lifting, in natural lifting, you start to realize that all of these things are just distractions, they don't matter. So that's my answer. Absolute Wonker, great name by the way. Do you have any advice for helping a partner with an eating disorder? My girlfriend has one pretty bad and she has started to take anxiety medication to help, which I'm not a fan of. For mental disorders, it's always tough to help someone because if you're the type that wants to help, chances are that your heart is in the right place, but your methods are going to be clumsy. There's a study that I particularly liked because it helped me reassess the way I actually approach things like this that showed that people with depression that were in a household with someone who was very high in industriousness tended to become worse and worse and worse because the person that was very productive was trying to help them, but the way they tried to help them just made it worse because it shamed them, but not in a productive way. It didn't shame them so that they would get better. It shamed them for their inability to be what that person was. And it's something that I personally struggle with. I have very high standards for myself. And when people don't live up to them, especially when it makes them miserable, it makes me mad. Because I just want to shake them and tell them, hey, fucking handle your life and get shit done. But for some people, it simply doesn't work, especially not with women. Women do not respond well to that type of advice. So what I can tell you to do is listen to her, try to be there for her, and try to slowly push her in the direction where she needs to go. If you push her with the intensity of a man bench pressing 5 plates, she's just going to fall. So slowly put your hand on her back, caress her back, make her feel heard, loved, and then just, ever so slightly push her forward. That's the way that actually works. For the medication thing, a lot of people are going to rely on medication. I've already said that. If it can kickstart a change, it's good. If she's going to be on it for the rest of her life, well, she's going to run into problems down the line. So again, maybe try to get her to change the way she lives, modify the environment so that she can actually get rid of the drug at some point. But keep in mind also that eating disorders can be very serious. So if it can mitigate the damage for now, and it can help her build something off of it, then it's a good thing. If she uses it as a crutch, it's a bad thing. Kane. Hello, with recent global events like the pandemic and rising tensions, I have become increasingly aware of food security and supply chain issues. What is your opinion on stocking up basics, rice, blah, blah, blah? I've assumed you're not living in a major city and would like to hear your opinion. Have you considered of stocking up, or do you think it's unnecessary and selfish? I don't think it's selfish as long as these are products that don't go bad. And you're not holding vital resources, which if it's rice, of course you're not. So having a few bags of rice in your back pocket, quote unquote, is always a good thing. Having water that you're going to put in glassware can be a good thing if you're afraid that it's going to run out. The canned food is the same. Date all of your canned food so that it never actually goes bad and you don't waste food, and it's not an issue at all. You are completely correct that there is going to be major issues with the supply chain and food security. It's something that was already demonstrated with the toilet paper craze. I firmly believe that this toilet paper shit was a test put in place by the industry to see if people would actually panic buy the second they thought that it was going to run out. Because keep in mind that there was never an actual shortage of toilet paper. It was just manufactured, meaning that the shortage was created by the news of the shortage. And if they can do it with toilet paper, you can bet your ass they can do it with food, especially water. So yes, open your eyes, realize that you are dependent on an industry that controls the supply, and if they decide to cut it to hike up the prices, for example, they'll do it. So find ways to actually circumvent that as much as possible so that the day it happens, you won't be one of the suckers that are going to be forced to actually just pay tens of hundreds of dollars for products that are just not worth that price. It's the same for gas and oil, although you need to be careful when you stockpile that type of things, of course. And me, myself, yes, I'm stocking up on certain products. Russia, what are your thoughts on Hinduism, Hindu society, and India in general? I am completely ignorant when it comes to things like this. I need to research more. I went to India for 2 weeks. It wasn't a good experience. I have seen many things that disgusted me plentifully. The caste system, the blatant poverty of some people while others had so much, which at the end of the day is everywhere, right? Every country is like this, but it was especially shocking coming from someone who lived in a civilized environment to see it, because in most Western cities, the poverty is still there and the imbalance of riches is still present, but it's camouflaged. Like we put a nice layer of polish over it so that it doesn't look too bad. In India, it's in your face. I remember being in a taxi and hearing someone claw at the door of the taxi, and it was a kid that had no legs that was literally crawling on the highway, and when there was a red light, he would crawl up the car and beg. You would never see that in France, right? It shocked me. And if we're going to talk about things like this too, to talk about Hindu society, even though I was just a foreigner there for 2 weeks, a certain place where I was, that I'm not going to cite, had servants, aka slaves. And when I left to go back to France, one of the servants cried. And he cried because I was the only person that was treating him like a human, meaning that I greeted him, I shook his hand, I called him by his name, I asked him how he was. The entire other cast of people that was there ignored him, like he was not even an animal. He was just not there. He was just there to serve them, and that's it. They wouldn't look at him in the eye. They would just say, do this. And so the guy, when I was leaving, was crying. He was bawling his eyes out because the last remnant of fucking humanity present in this place was gone. I was leaving. It broke my heart. It was really tough. So there's a lot of problems with India in general, I would say. I'm not going to give you solutions because I'm not privy of them all, but it was a certain experience that opened my eyes to the actual privilege that I had living in France. Pedro le Chef, do you think a child can be successfully raised by two same-sex people? Oh, you're coming in with the politically incorrect questions. Okay. Do I think a child can be successfully raised by two same-sex people? 10 years ago, I would have said no, absolutely not. Nowadays, I'm more balanced, meaning that I do think it's possible. I think it's possible for two men or two women to raise a kid that is going to be balanced and happy. And I would say, in my personal view, that it's always better to be raised by two parents, even if they're the same sex, rather than just one. Meaning that a kid that is going to be raised by two dads is almost always going to be better off than a kid raised by a single mom, simply because the amount of effort you have to put in to raise a kid and work at the same time is too much for one person, so there is an imbalance and the kid is lacking. He's lacking something. If you have two parents, you're going to get all that you need. Now you have to look at the energies provided. A lot of the time when people say that it's not possible for an homosexual household to raise kids is because they are not going to provide a balanced amount of energy to the kid, aka it's going to be too much masculine energy, too much feminine energy because it's two males or two females. That also to me is not correct because people are shades of masculinity and femininity. Men, of course, gravitate more toward masculine traits and females towards feminine traits. And all of these traits are, of course, not social constructs. They are first and foremost the result of biology. But it is firmly possible and absolutely possible for a man to be more feminine and a man to be more masculine so that they can provide nurture and challenge and complications and difficulty, security at the same time to a kid. It's doable. And actually, if you take a look at homosexual couples, almost all the time you can see that one is going to be more feminine and one more masculine. It's something that is homophobic according to some people because it's the infamous so who's the woman in the relationship when it's two dudes? But there's some truth to that. The best relationships are that are balanced, where the two people bring something together different to the table. So if people that are like this manage to adopt, they can raise a kid that is going to be balanced. But because of the inclination of biology when it comes to natural sex and masculinity and femininity, there's also a strong chance that they won't be able to do that. And that is when things happen that should never happen. So there is a possibility for it, but there's also a possibility for catastrophe and disaster, as we've seen in the news, where horrible things happen to kids that had same-sex parents for a reason or another. It should always remain a minority of people. It should always remain an exception. And the advantage or the priority should, of course, always be given to heterosexual couples because it's what makes the most sense, in my view. But, as I said, it's always more important to have two parents. So, single women that want to adopt a kid for whatever reason need to go get a man first, and homosexual couples need to have priority. There's a hierarchy and an injustice that is just natural and needs to actually be kept in place, because I think it's for the better success and lifestyle of the children that are going to be adopted. Question 2. Opinion on video game addiction, possible video on the subject. Yes, I have a video that is cooking on the subject. And my view is that video game addiction is one of the worst addictions out there, just like caffeine addiction, because many people don't even know that it's an addiction. And these are the most vicious ones, but I'm not going to spoil the video. Corey Sift, what would be your advice to a teen trying to figure out their future career? Well, see what you like in school, see the topics that actually you are passionate about, and see if there is a way to make money in that field. Research the field and look at your options. Look at what degree you need to pursue. Look at how many years and how much money you have to invest, and then get into it. And always keep your options open. Always be able to pivot if something better is going to appear, but don't program hope. Don't degree hope. Don't change your mind every single day. You need to build a strong idea of what you want. If you modify it slightly down the line, it's fine. If you make major shifts, it takes time. It's an investment that you have to then put in, so be careful with that. Highbrow, you mentioned you used to play League of Legends. Who were your favorite legends to play and what position did you play? I was a top support main, but I could really play every position besides jungle. So in terms of skill, I was a very strong support. Then I was also a very good top laner. So 1, 2 was support top lane. 3 mid laner I was decent to. 4 ADC, what we call marksman nowadays, I think. And then 5th jungle. If you put me jungle, the game was lost. You could already know that the game was lost. I was the guy that was getting executed by the creeps in the jungle every single time I tried. So that's all my positions. And my favorite legends, I played pretty much, my peak pool was massive. I played a lot of champions, but for support, I liked Lulu. I liked Nunu also, when he was still viable in that role. I liked Malphite for top lane, Aatrox, Riven, Vlad, which is a funny pick because he's been relevant and meta for like 10 years. He never went out of meta. He's such a great character. So yeah, that's mostly what I played. My champion pool again was pretty much every single champion that existed. But I was really good at some of them. I was never a one-trick pony. I was the opposite of a one-trick pony. And then opinion on Tyler 1. Thoughts on him as a lifter and physiques. He has very good numbers for his height and weight. Yeah, he's a gifted manlet. There's a lot of guys like this where he's massive because he's short and he has short arms and everything. So he does look tremendously big. And he's very strong, right? He could actually powerlift if he wanted. And he plays League. I haven't watched him in a while, but I like the guy. He's funny. Chips Keto. Are you much of a handyman? Do you enjoy woodworking or home improvement? If no, would it be something you would like to learn? I'm a by default handyman, meaning that I wait until something breaks down and then I fix it. But I don't do it because it's something that I enjoy doing. Woodworking I do enjoy quite a lot, but it's very primal and base level. I don't do anything complicated at all. And in terms of home improvement, I could live in a box in the wood. It doesn't really matter to me. As long as I have a bed and a fridge and a gym. I used to live in what was essentially a cabin where I had just the bare minimum. So I'm not one for home improvement. It's something that my partner takes care of because she prefers comfort and stuff like this that I don't care about. So I'm not super invested in stuff like this, but I would like to learn. There are certain things that I would like to be able to do by myself to be more self-sufficient. Sterling Homan. What are your favorite sources for news and science? I have none. I don't actually watch the news at all because I figured out when I was 16 or 17 that they lied constantly, and I just do not want to be lied to. And science, likewise, I mean, I read the occasional study, I read books that are technically scientific, but I never use them as sources because if you watch this channel, I surmise that your goal is to actually get information from me. If it were just to get information from me reading you a book, you could just read the book directly. Daniel L. What do you think about the book 48 Laws of Power? It's a good book. A lot of people approach it from a perspective of good versus evil, which makes you sort of lose the plot because it's not the point of the book. The book is morally neutral in a sense. And it's very Machiavellic, as we say in French. It's a Machiavellian type of literature that only focuses on getting things done, getting from point A to point B, how to manipulate people, how to amass as much power as possible. So if you're interested, even if you're not the type of person that wants to become someone like that, it's always good to learn the methods because then you can learn how to resist them as well. It's a good read. Petrus Ratagsjik. What is your opinion on antidepressants and other medications for various mental illnesses? In my country, young kids are sometimes given really heavy drugs to combat things like anxiety, while people with actual dangerous mental illnesses are often left without treatment. Well, as I said previously, my thoughts on the matter is that these need to be used for what they are, which is a chemical crutch, until you can get your life back in order. Too many people don't do that at all. They take the pill, it fixes them, quote unquote, and then they never actually modify their life. So they don't really do what is supposed to be done, which is not a surprise because the doctors, the therapists, the psychologists, the psychiatrists, whatever, don't do their job properly, in my opinion. They just think that pills can solve things when the actual work needs to be done from the inside. The pill is just there to actually allow the work to happen. So that is my take on these things. If you need them to stabilize your life and then to build up, by all means do it. I'm not going to demonize you for it, but don't become dependent on these drugs and understand that they have side effects that are pretty serious. And when it comes to kids, giving drugs, any type of mental illness drug to a kid is a tragedy, especially when it's just because the kids are overdiagnosed, like ADHD. Most kids with ADHD are young boys. They don't have an actual deficit disorder, attention deficit disorder. They're just rambunctious. They have energy. They need to walk around. They need to play. They need to lift. They need to actually be active and be young boys. But of course, when you force them to sit down 8 hours a day and focus on a blackboard with a teacher that is depressed themselves and completely uncharismatic, it's no wonder they cannot focus, because why would they want to focus on something so boring? So I think that there's an overprescription, that the institutions that prescribe these pills and big pharma that sells these pills will eventually need to be held accountable for the lives they destructed, because these drugs taken at such a young age have a direct impact on the chemistry of the brain, and it can truly destroy you from the get-go. Like, your chance at life is shot because your parents were not able to take correct decisions, and that is heartbreaking because, of course, they blinded the institution, they trusted the institution blindly. Now, when it comes to people with actual dangerous mental illnesses left without treatment, well, that's, of course, there's always a portion of the population that is just ignored because they don't have resources, they don't have mental health, they don't have, what is the term of that? Mental health insurance, and they have no one who cares about them, and because of that, they're just left alone until they kill themselves or hurt someone else, and then society starts to care. So we give drugs to people who don't need the drugs, and the people who actually need the drugs get nothing. Let me see how long we have left. Okay, we can still go for a bit, I think. BET, how do you start living life more? You are always hate my body since I didn't like it when I was young, but I grew and changed. I'm confident with it now, but my mentality about life is still stuck. As a kid, I never wanted to go anywhere, do anything, talk to anyone, etc., etc. As I got older to where I am now, I want to go do stuff, I want to be in relationships, I want to start living life. How do I get started? I never got that chance to start living in high school when people did sports or join clubs, have relationships, go to parties. Well, yeah. One, you're going to have to deal with the fact that you think that you missed out, and because you think you missed out, you're going to keep missing out because it's going to keep you stuck. You need to let go of that. That baggage is just a weight on your shoulders that prevents you from getting stuff done. I know so many men like this who they never actually did anything in their teenagehood, and now they don't do anything either because they are just constantly stuck in the past and revisit the things that could have happened. Guess what? It didn't happen, so it never will. Look at what you have now. The present, that's when you can get things done. And the only way to do that is to actually go outside. I know that it's tough to give that advice in today's climate, but seek out clubs, seek out people. If you feel the way you do, I can tell you that there are other people that feel the way you do as well. And you can actually connect with these people. So it's going to take time. You should do it step by step. Don't go crazy, but try to join a club again. Try to see if there are social venues where you live, like a farmer's market. You can just chat with people. Build yourself up to social interactions. Build your social stamina, and it will get you where you want to be. That's how you start living life. Also understand that if you want to start living life, what does that even mean? What is living life to you? What things do you want to accomplish? What things do you want to enjoy? Figure them out first so that you don't actually waste your time doing things that won't make you happy. Ted Wood. Are you the Ted Wood the Mighty or are you another Ted Wood? Because I know we have two Ted Woods on the channel. Is it generally the role and responsibility of a man to initiate a relationship with a woman? Yes, absolutely. And it always will be the same. It's just biological. And on top of that, you will find that if you are a man who has the ability to shoot your shot and to try to get at women, you will have a much more success, because if you just expect to sit there and be pretty and do this, and women are going to come to you, never gonna happen. You can be a 10-10 model, 6'4" with a 20-inch dong, you will remain single for the rest of your life. There is this myth that very attractive men just get women without doing anything. That's bullshit. That's a thing that ugly men tell themselves to feel better because they can say, oh, well, that guy didn't have to put in any work. Nonsense. Regardless of your level of attractiveness, you are the one that has to go out there. You have to put yourself out there and you have to take a risk. Women are risk adverse. They will not take that chance. So you have to go out and get rejected. I've personally been rejected 25, 26 times, more than that even. But it was important. It was a part of my development as a man. So it is your responsibility to do that. And I know it's scary because on a psychological level, when you get rejected by a woman, it shakes your core, it shakes your value, and you start thinking, oh man, no woman will ever want me. Wrong. This woman in particular doesn't want you. That's 1 out of 4 billion. You're going to be fine. Statistically speaking, your odds are very good. So keep trying, keep going after it. Andrea, if you had a bad childhood with one of the parents dying young, and in general a bad childhood, but you kinda don't care and never really thought about it, what should you do? Because I heard that it has a great impact on everything you do in your adult life, how you behave, etc. There's a truth to it, but it can also be that you're someone who's very resistant, so it never actually got to you. If you live a good, happy life, don't go digging up graves that don't need to be dug. Just live your life and be happy. But if you feel that there is a shadow, there is a weight on your shoulders, and you cannot get where you want to be, you need to dig. You need to get a therapist and you need to start discussing things. There is a chance that somewhere in your heart there is a door, and that door leads to a vault, and within that vault is a trauma that you never actually exteriorized, and that is the shadow that you feel. You need to face that shadow. It's going to be a bitch. It's going to make you cry. It's going to be very difficult, but once you are in control of that demon, your life will improve. So you need to start reflecting on yourself and your past. James Jordan. You mentioned part of your family is Spanish. Have you ever been to Spain and what do you think of it? I'm Spanish myself. Yes, my family is Spanish. And yes, I have been to Spain. I've been to Spain every year of my life for 20 plus years. I love Spain. I love Spain. I love the people. I love the climate. I love the food. Although I only go there on vacation, so I know that for the people who actually want to work there, it's a different social climate, but it's my country of heart, in a sense. That's where my ancestors were from. Piku Materovic. What is your opinion in regard to social media dating apps, such as Tinder? Should we accept that this will be the future of finding a partner? Absolutely not. Because if we accept that this is our future, we have no future. These websites are horrible. They are always skewed towards females. They greatly beneficiate females because it It takes what women already get to do in real life, which is sit back and wait for men to approach them, and it magnifies it by 1,000. So not only does it make it impossible for a guy to actually take a shot at a girl, but it makes women go insane. Because the amount of attention they get on these sites is times 100. Even if you're an ugly chick, you'll still get dudes just drooling on your shoes. And that is the reason why so many women are going to end up alone and miserable. Because their standards and what they expect in a man is all out of whack. They don't understand that social media has skewed our perception of the world. And it's the same for men. So for both genders' sake, avoid these places like the plague. I know it's tough because you live in an environment where everyone uses them, so you think that you are forced to do it. That's not true. Take yourself away from that. For the most part, the type of women you'll get on these places are not what you want, unless you're looking just for hookups. But even if that's the case, unless you are part of the few percent of men that actually have a chance at playing the game of hypergamy, you're just going to be thrown aside. It's going to destroy your self-confidence. So just don't do it. Saif Ali, any advice on how to stop overthinking? Yes, action. Action is the only remedy to overthinking. You think about something, do it. Now you're not thinking anymore, and it's actually going to occupy you, and you're going to be able to actually have a realistic expectation of the time it takes. Because the issue with thinking is that it's like this. It ignites and it's gone. Right now, I'm thinking about colonizing Mars. I'm going to build a tower on Mars. It took me 5 seconds. If I actually try to do that, it would take me 10,000 years, even more than that. So always put your thoughts into action, and you will find that your thoughts will stop spiraling because you'll canalize them. You'll actually make something out of them. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts on vaccines that babies take? Well, it's up to the discretion of the parents and the medical professionals. I know that for myself, my mom got me vaccinated, but she was smart about it. She refused cocktails. She refused 7 vaccines at once. She said, no, today you do these 2, and then we'll come back and we'll do these 2 in 2 months. And my doctor, thankfully, was intelligent, so he prescribed a cocktail vaccine that was less heavy. I don't understand why we need to jab a kid with 15 vaccines the day it's born. Let the kid live a bit. Like, an immune system is going to develop by itself. The vaccines are going to help the immune system adapt to the environment, but there's no rush to actually get it done. So I'm fine with that as long as it's not just overwhelming. QA question by Sapo with a cute penguin as his profile pic. What are your thoughts on Emma, historical European martial arts? I like it. I do think that some people who engage in it would be better off just lifting weights because it's sort of LARPing, but it can be fun from what I've seen. I think we're going to stop there. I'm just going to answer Robert's question, and then I'm going to keep the other question. No, actually, we're going to stop there for today, and I'm going to keep the other questions for the next time because we have plenty, but the next Q&A number 10 will come sooner. So if you have questions, you can add them underneath this video, and I will combine Q&A number 8 and Q&A number 9 to make Q&A number 10. Again, if someone wants to timestamp this, I appreciate you, I appreciate your efforts, and I will see you next time.